This is Glambition Radio, episode number 214, with Suzanne Somers, alternative medicine champion.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Glambition Radio.
Glambition Radio.
Glambition Radio.
Glambition Radio.
Glambition Radio.
Glambition Radio.
Welcome to Glambition Radio. I am your host, Allie Brown. I'm an entrepreneur, mentor, investor, and founder of The Trust, the modern premier network for 7- and 8-figure women leaders. I love thinking big, doing different, and exploring ideas that disrupt the status quo, especially when it comes to women, because we are creating the new models for leadership, business success, making money, and changing the world. And hey, we're doing it with style. So let's go. We are going to have so much fun on the show today. I am over the moon to finally get Suzanne Summers on the show. Many of you remember her. If you grew up in the 70s, she was the iconic Chrissy Snow on Three's Company. And then, man, she really surprised everyone over the years. And that's, if I wanted you to take one thing away from this interview, it's the consistent knockdown reinvention, lemons into lemonade. What do we have? What are the opportunities in front of us? What do I have that I can work with instead of looking at what I can't work with? And in today's time and how many of us, we make these plans and they got totally knocked down and we're reorienting, we're rechanging, reshifting. I love talking to the older women because they've been through this again and again, different ways, different careers, different types of setbacks than we're dealing with today. But man, you just so much wisdom over the years. And if you haven't been following along the last 2 decades, I mean, she's really turned into quite a champion for alternative medicine based on her experience with it. I've become increasingly interested as, I'm nearing midlife now and didn't want to look like Mrs. Roper, on Three's Company. If you think of Mrs. Roper, that's kind of how we thought we would look, at this age. And now, man, all my clients were 40s, 50s, even 60s. They're making the money, they're making the impact, like they're in the prime of their life. And so how do we align how we look and feel with that? And that's what I love that she represents. So we go into a lot of fun stories, her beginning of her career, and then we land on a lot of the hard truths about the healthcare system, medicine, really interesting insights that I hope you listen to. But first, I want to give a shout out to 2 great reviews we got on iTunes. Thank you. Sassafras209 says, never disappointing. Thank you, Allie, your team, and amazing guests. I appreciate you sharing such valuable and witty content to help women like me create their own success story. And then Hainisher Way said, great podcast for women entrepreneurs, business owners, or those looking for personal growth and development. This is my go-to podcast when I need a boost for my own business. Thank you, ladies. And remember, we're giving away these beautiful journals as a thank you for leaving us a review during this time. So even if you left one recently, please go fill out the form at glambitiongiveaway.com. You'll see a photo of the beautiful journals we ordered. We'd like to mail one to you. And just as a thank you for going out of your way, because I know it's probably not on a priority list for you today, but we really appreciate it. It helps new people find out about the show. It helps the guests we're trying to get on the show see that this is a solid show with a solid listenership. And I just personally really appreciate it. So glambitiongiveaway.com. Quick reminder that today's show is sponsored by The Trust. It is the new premier network for 7- and 8-figure women entrepreneurs. And I'll tell you what's interesting that's happening. With everything happening over the last few months, this group that I am privy to and privileged to lead, these amazing women, all types of backgrounds, all types of businesses all over the world, the conversations that are happening in this group are the ones that you want to be a part of. They are not the conversations happening on Facebook. It's not part of the mess. These are leaders' conversations. And I really hope you listened to last week's show with my guest, Dafina Smith, who is also a member of The Trust. And women like these, I mean, the leaders now need to step up in our circles. And the work we often do is behind the scenes and not frontline visible all the time. And if that sounds powerful to you, if that sounds like a circle you'd like to be a part of and you qualify, come have a look. It's jointhetrust.org. We have an event coming up in September. We would love to consider you for the group. please just come check it out. If you are so ready for a different conversation coming from a place of power and what we can do right now, then please come join us. Now, get ready for a fun and fascinating conversation. You may want to get a glass of wine for this one with Suzanne Somers. Suzanne, I'd like to know where you are today.
I'm in the desert in Palm Springs, California, and the weather's beautiful. Usually this time of the year, it's unbearably hot, but we are working on remodeling a new house after having lived in this beloved piece of property for 43 years.
Oh, wow.
But my husband dislocated his hip jumping off a wall 2 or 3 years ago, showing off for me, which you gotta love.
Oh.
And then I fractured my hip, too boring to even tell you how. And that's when I realized, wow, a house with 100 stairs and 5 levels, maybe it's time to go to a 1 level. So we found this amazing place, and it's exciting.
Oh, wow. You still love the area.
Oh, gosh, yeah. I mean, when you've been someplace 43 years, it's home.
Yeah. So we're in Scottsdale, Arizona. My mom used to live in Palm Springs. I know it really well. The big question is, will the new home have Big Al's Bar?
Oh, gosh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Then we approve.
That's the secret to our successful marriage, is that 5 o'clock tequila at Big Al's Bar.
No carbs, right? Or low carb?
Little to no sugar. And when I used to drink white wine, I got kind of puffy and thick. And then when I switched to tequila, I lost all the weight. And I get to, it's fun that we have this thing that we look forward to every afternoon.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes we do it maybe 4 times a week, but it's 5 o'clock comes, I go down to the bar, we turn on the music, we listen to usually the Diana Krall channel, because it's just great programming all over the place. And we talk and laugh and dance, and it's just an incredible hour to an hour and a half that we spend together each day. And I look forward to it, and I would miss it terribly did we not do it. So I'm not going to become an alcoholic at this stage of my life, and I never drank before. So I'm just enjoying it. I'm a full-grown adult. I can do whatever
For God's sake, enjoy
want.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm married to an Australian, so talk about drinking. I mean, but we switched to just vodka and tequila. He likes vodka at the end of the day. Now, we have 7-year-old twins, so I deserve that drink.
You do? Wow,
Yep.
how fun.
Yep. So
how darling.
So we should talk about boy, girl. And
wow.
I have to tell you, before we get to business, I want to share with you your favorite book by far, which I just read last year, was The Two's Company.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
We need love stories to look up to that are ahead of us. And the world focuses so much on the new and the now. And, I didn't meet my partner till later in life. I met Brett when I was 41. Didn't realize I was fertile myrtle, to be frank.
Wow.
Twins came right away.
Wow.
So we've got some time to make up for once they're out of the house one day.
Yeah.
And I said, look, we want to live like Suzanne and Alan. That's what it's going to be like.
Well, all these years together, I do believe that we've been here before and we'll be here again. And the day I met Alan Hamill 50 years ago, I fell in love that day. And it was overwhelming. And he says he fell in love. I think he fell in lust, but I do think he fell in love that same way, although he wasn't going to admit it, because then, well, what are you going to do about it? But we just had a wonderful love affair that's never gone away. In fact, one thing that all your listeners need to know is that we're programmed in chapters. You grow up, you have a career, maybe you have your children, you raise your children, you do a good job, and then you sort of fade to black. I'm here to tell you that the passage or chapter after you've had your children and they're all grown up and even grandchildren are in there is a brand new, wonderful, incredible time together. Here we are at this stage of our life, and we're having a cocktail together every night. We're dancing. When this pandemic wasn't on, we were going out regularly, and I love to get dressed up. If it's got sequins on it, I'm just really happy. And I've just never been as in love with him as I am now. And I've always been in love with him. In love I love, but I'm in love. And I tell him probably 10 times a day, and he, me, and he's my life. And I don't care if that seems old fashioned. I think that I have what a lot of people want, and I get it.
I think we need to return to that, and I think the crazy year of, I don't know what we're going to call 2020 on the tail end of this, but
wow.
I think it has, if some good has come of it, it's brought us back to what's really important. So thank you for being just a wonderful role model in so many ways. Now I have to say, so everyone I'm sure starts off before giving you their health issues, how they knew you as Chrissy Snow, right? This must drive you crazy.
No,
sorry, but
I love it.
Well, we all grew up back then, and I explained to the younger women on my team, I'm like, we had 5-7 channels, something like that,
right
after school, and your parents would let you watch this stuff because it's all, and if you were really good, you could stay up and watch Love Boat. But that was, but Three's Company, and you kind of grew up with. And to be frank, then I hadn't really known what you were doing because I think you were off doing the Vegas thing and all this stuff, and I was young, and then saw these books coming out in the last decade and was kind of following along with what you were doing. Oh, then don't forget the Thigh Master, and all that. And so once I became a real entrepreneur, then going back and understanding your story, I then realized your incredible business acumen. I realized your eye for opportunities, how you would just turn lemons into lemonade. And I'd love for you to tell us a bit about the journey of becoming the businesswoman you are. And you can start as far back as you'd like to.
Well, sometimes the worst things that happen to you in life are your greatest opportunities. And it's all how you look at it. How can I grow from this? How can I learn? The biggest blow I had was being fired at the height of my success on Three's Company. I couldn't have done better. I couldn't have brought in more ratings. I was number one. My show was number one. I had the highest demographics of any woman in television. I couldn't have done any better. I was an advertiser's dream. It was everything. But my contract was up, and shortly before me, Laverne and Shirley renegotiated with ABC and gave them a colonic. And so they said, we have to stop this. So the next number one actress who asked for it is going to get fired to be an example. And that was me. I walked right into it. There was no reason. My husband went in to renegotiate on my behalf. And it's interesting, he got a call the night before from somebody at the CFO's office of ABC, and a friend of a friend. This person called and said, you didn't hear this from me, but I just came out of a meeting, and they're going to hang a nun in the marketplace, and it's going to be Suzanne. Mm-hmm. So they planned to fire me. And when Alan left our house that morning, at that time we're in Venice, California, living in a multi-level house, he stopped uncharacteristically at the door, and he looked back at me and he said, this could all blow out of the water. And I went, no, it's a negotiation. My contract's up. I have to, you say we want this, they'll say we want that. You'll come back and forth, and you'll meet in the middle, and then it'll all be fixed up. So when he came home, there's a way the front door opens when it's good news, and there's a way it opens when it's bad news. And it opened real slow. And then I heard him paddling up the stairs real slow. So I met him at the landing, and he looked at me and he said, you're out. I said, I'm out? What do you mean I'm out? He said, you're out. He said, they fired you really within minutes after I walked in the door. And he felt terrible. It wasn't his fault. They weren't going to give an inch. But then he did something so incredible. He took me by the shoulders and he said, we're going to make this work for us. And I've always looked at life that same way. Take the negatives and use them like judo, using forward energy to win. And so that's when we decided I couldn't get a job in television. Can you imagine going from the number one show and being the hottest property on network television when it really mattered, on every magazine cover in 60 Minutes and Barbara Walters in 2020, and I was featured on all those shows. And all of a sudden, the doors slammed everywhere. It was terrible. And I have to say, not one woman in the industry, not one woman, not women in film, not any of the other women's organizations backed me up. And I guess they were afraid, they didn't want to make any waves. Things weren't so good for women back then. If that happened to me today with the Me Too movement and everything, I'd own ABC. But I think I was luckier. I had to reinvent. And that's a real important thing for me to have learned and for your listeners to have learned. When one door closes, you crawl through the window. you reinvent. And I sat and felt sorry for myself for a while in my living room. Why wasn't I happy with what I had? And then a voice came into my head and it said, why are you focused on what you don't have? Why don't you focus on what you do have? Right now I'm talking to the voice. What do I have? The voice says, you have enormous visibility. Everybody knows your name, not only in this country, but around the world. And I thought, that's valuable. Wow, that's valuable. So I said to Alan, I've been doing all these network specials with John Wayne and Sammy Davis Jr. and Frank Sinatra. And, I was working with all the greats. And I said, I'd like you to make a deal for me in Vegas and get a residency. So he went to Las Vegas and went from hotel to hotel. They offered him 2 weeks everywhere. And finally, he went to the MGM Grand, and one of those mafia types was running it then. And
I can just picture the meeting,
right?
Cigars and a woman in feathers and sequins bringing them food. And
probably. But Alan said it was a long, long office with no furniture except a desk way down at the other end. So Alan does like a perk walk down to the desk, and the guy never even looks up. He says, "What do you want?" And Alan said, "I want a 2-year deal for Suzanne Somers, and I don't care what the money is." And the guy puts his pen down. He looks up. He goes, "Why do you want that?" And Alan said, "Because I know her. And I know if she doesn't succeed the first time, she will. She always does." And anyway, Alan walked out of there with a 2-year deal at the MGM Grand for more money than I was asking for on Three's Company.
Wow.
So I took that as a sign, and we put together a show. And people were curious to see Chrissy Snow on stage live. So they came, and I sold out 2 shows a night, every night. And I loved the form. I tap dance goofy. And when
That
you
just sounds like a ball. That sounds like so much fun. I'd like to go do that right now and forget everything else.
Yeah. And by the time several years later, when television started calling me back, I thought, I don't want to. I like it here. And we had built a ranch out there, and we're living a new life. But then I went back to work on Step by Step and a couple of other series. But during the day when I was on the road was when I wrote the books. So would all of this have happened? I've just finished my 27th book. Would all of this have happened had I stayed on Three's Company? For sure, had another few years, and I probably would have gone on to another sitcom and then another one. But no sitcom is ever as good as your first one. And am I glad it happened? I still think it was shitty what they did to me and unfair and the old boys club and wrong, but it worked for me. And what we realized is I never wanted to work for anyone ever again. And that's when Suzanne and Alan, the team, the entrepreneur business started.
Yeah. Now, when was the Thigh Master? I couldn't remember that period.
Right around this time. When I was doing 2 2-hour shows a night, now I'm at the Hilton. And I was a star of the Moulin Rouge, and I did I think 35 minutes in the middle of the Moulin Rouge show. But 2 2-hour shows a night, big dancing show, dancing, and costumes, and how fun. I danced down 40 stairs with all these beautiful male dancers in white top hats and tails, and I had a big Tool train behind me singing "I Love Paris." And who gets to do that? I know. And we were just having the greatest time. But during the day, I'm just not the type to sit around and watch soap operas. And the news wasn't nearly as interesting as it is now. And so I started writing books. And then I'd already written a book in 1973, which kind of launched my career. Johnny Carson discovered me in the commissary at NBC. And that was just an amazing...
Those are the poems, right?
Yeah, lucky thing. Imagine I'm sitting all by myself in the commissary at NBC, and Johnny Carson walks in, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, there's Johnny Carson. And then I thought, oh my God, I think Johnny Carson's walking over to me. And he says, "Hey, little lady, what are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I have a callback for the Dom DeLuise show." "Oh, he's a friend of mine. I hope you get it." And I didn't have an 8x10 even at that time. This was before Three's Company, before everything. And so all I had was this little book of poetry that I had somehow gotten published called Touch Me. And I just kind of shoved it at him. And that was Wednesday. Friday of that
out
week.
of nervousness, or like, here's
out of
how
nervousness.
you get in touch, or what?
Nervousness, for sure, nervousness. And Friday night of that week, I'm on the Tonight Show. I had to write a bad check because I didn't own a dress to buy a dress because I didn't have a dress to wear on the Johnny Carson show. I had one credit. I was the mysterious blonde in the Thunderbird in American Graffiti, but I hadn't even seen the movie and it felt so stupid. It was one day's work. So I figured, oh my God, they must love my poetry. So when I'm standing behind the curtain, that famous curtain, wondering, how I'm going to get the $75 in the bank soon enough so that the check doesn't bounce, I hear him say, "We've all been wondering who the mysterious blonde in the Thunderbird is. Well, we found her." And the curtain opened and the audience went, woo! And I didn't understand it because I hadn't seen the movie. I couldn't afford to go. And I was a teenage mother, but I was still a single mother at this time. And every penny was difficult to come by. And I got along with Johnny Carson because I was naive. I was small town. He responded to the girl in me, the small townness of me, the naivete of me. They started having me on every month. And eventually my little book of poetry became the #1 best-selling book of poetry in America, along with Rod McEwen.
Because you guys had kind of a shtick. He would kind of make fun of you while you were reading it, right?
Exactly.
If I understand.
Exactly. That's what he would do. But I made him look good because I would read him poems and he would, mock being sad or mock crying. And he got a lot of laughs out of it. The other thing that's important to note, of all the times I was on the Tonight Show, Johnny Carson never came on to me. He always treated me respectfully. I think I was too pure for him to even think about it. And I was at that time.
It's nice to hear stories about women who've gone through their careers and have found men and work with men they respect. They've been great mentors to them. And I think it's important we share these stories too, right now, especially.
Yeah. Men have treated me very badly in my life, but I don't know. I've always loved men. And I've reconciled the men who, like my father, I loved him. I've forgiven him, but I had to write 3 books and do a Broadway musical to get over it. But I think that purity that Johnny Carson responded to with me was the same purity that I used to create the character of Chrissy Snow. Everybody loved her because they knew she'd never lie. She'd never steal your husband or boyfriend. She always knew what was right. She had a moral code. And people anticipated what Chrissy Snow was going to do before Chrissy Snow even said it. And that's when you created a great character. It's delicious.
Yeah.
That the audience would laugh before I even said it. So probably I stayed on that show just the right amount of time because I left the audience wanting more.
Yeah.
And to this day, how many decades has it been? And people still say, "Oh, I missed that character and I never watched it after you left." And
no, we didn't. I was like 7. And even though I think they brought in some other blonde lady later, and I'm like, that's not Chrissy.
No,
everyone knew, young, old, they tried, but it just wasn't the same at all.
No, they tried to make the 2 girls, they brought in 2 different girls. The first one didn't work. They made them watch my tapes to try to imitate me. Well, you can't win if you're imitating.
Yeah.
You got to come up with your own character. And so that's why it didn't work.
Yeah.
I left the audience wanting more, which probably worked in my favor.
There's a lot to be said for that these days. I think some people they're scared to do it because when you have a good thing, you're not going to walk away. And
No.
I've had quite a few entrepreneurs on the show and we get into really good discussions around sometimes they built something they had personally outgrown, in something, a company that works or a model that works. And so the next, and we need permission to say that. I think it's hard because we should feel grateful. We feel like, oh, I'm so blessed to have this. And this is kind of what I wanted. And I've reached my goals. And now I want something else.
There's that feeling of, okay, I did this. All right, next,
Yeah.
When I wrote the first book I wrote in my hotel room was a book called Keeping Secrets. Growing up with a violent alcoholic father. And it started a movement. It started the Children of Alcoholics movement. I found out that there were hundreds of thousands, probably a million or more broken birds out there who came from violent homes, alcoholism, but didn't drink themselves, but didn't know what was wrong. And I didn't drink at all back then. And I just knew there was something wrong with me, and it was unbelievable low self-esteem. Because when you live with a bully who is either a drug addict or an alcoholic or, has anger management issues, the way they keep you around them is to keep bullying you until you just feel that you can't even survive on your own. And that's what happened to me, more so than my older brother and sister, because they had some good years. And I was talking to my sister about that recently. And I think it's uncomfortable for her that I talk this candidly about our father. But the way I always talk about him is that I found total forgiveness. He didn't mean to grow up and be that person. Alcoholism is a terrible disease, and no one wants to talk about that. But I said to my sister, see, the difference in your experience because of the birth order and mine is that my childhood was all about fear. I was terrified all the time. I said, that changes who you are on the inside. I said, you didn't have that experience. But anyway, back to entrepreneurship. After I was fired, and I'm now doing the two-hour shows in Vegas, we're driving home one night in Vegas, and I said to Alan, because I now weigh 98 pounds, because you can't do 4 hours of exercise every night and all that kind of good stress, but stress. And I said, we have to find a way to make a living that I don't have to show up. And he said, passive income. I said, whatever. And that's when he found the Thigh Master. And it was called the V Toner. And the woman comes over and shows you, she invented it and how you use it for the upper body and for your, lifting your bust and your biceps and everything. And I'm staring at it. I said, is that good for the inner thighs? And she said, yeah, but women are more interested in their upper body. I said, no, they're not. No, they're not. No, they're not. Women are like mortified when the thighs start jiggling. And we called it the Thigh Master that day. And then the way the commercial came about was I had bought a pair of Manolo Blahnik high heels, perfectly plain, nude, with the perfect pointy toe, the perfect amount of toe cleavage, the perfect height, that they're $565 back then. What's that today? A couple thousand? And I thought, oh, Alan's going to think I am so stupid for spending so much money on a pair of absolutely plain shoes. But I knew they made my legs look so great. So I'm in my bra and underpants, and I walk out of my dressing room into his, and I said, like my new shoes? And he said, great legs. And I went, oh my God, that's the commercial. And if you recall the commercial, it starts on those shoes. And it works its way up my legs with off-camera Alan Hamill saying, great legs. And I go, thank you. That's because I use Thigh Master. So then I was able to write off the shoes, and we sold 10 million Thigh Masters.
Oh my God.
And still selling. Because it works. It's 1995, and it really works. It works for your inner thighs. It does work for, blanking on the muscle, lifting your bust. What's that muscle above your bust? Right. I know.
Upper chest to pecs. Pecs.
Pecs. Yeah.
Pecs.
Yeah.
You can use it up there.
Yeah. And so it's just one of these little devices that's got a good vibe, and it's a funny gift, and God bless Thigh Master.
Now, was that also the start of your interest in health at that time? Or was that just kind of more of a fun product you were doing and you didn't get serious about the health till later? Because it's interesting that wasn't fitness.
I got serious about emotional health with writing Keeping Secrets about growing up the child of an alcoholic. Then the next book I wrote was Children of Abuse. And I think I was still working out my emotional issues. It was a very depressing book for me to write because we've all got a story, and most of the stories were just horrendous. And I just got burnt out and worn down writing these stories and interviewing these people who hadn't come to forgiveness. Forgiveness is the gift you give yourself. And once you're on the other side and you truly forgive, you can see the opportunity in the negative. Because you know what I got from my father? The I'll show yous. I remember on the violent nights when he'd tell me I was a piece of crap. And in my head, I think, you wait and see one day, I'll show you. And that those I'll show yous became a driving force for me with everything. I'll show you. When I got fired from Three's Company and I revamped and went into Vegas, and I remember from the very first night, I thought, yeah, well, I'll show you. And when we sold out both shows every night, night after night after night. So now I don't welcome problems and mistakes, although there's a book by M. Scott Peck called The Road Less Traveled. And the very first line is, it's the wise man that welcomes problems and mistakes because through them we grow spiritually and emotionally. And that is my experience exactly. Every problem I've had has been an opportunity to grow spiritually and emotionally. So the health started when I started gaining weight. You're at an age, I'm telling you, you're just starting an age. I think you said the other day you were 48. This is when you're just going to start gaining weight. And I know why, and I know what to do about it now. And it's because your hormones are now fluctuating. And until you find a qualified doctor who understands hormone replacement with natural hormones, bioidentical hormones, biologically identical to the human hormone, an exact replica of what you once made or still make a little of. But when you start declining, I call it the 7 dwarves of menopause or premenopause. Itchy, bitchy, sleepy, sweaty, bloated, forgetful, and all dried up. And they all come visiting you in your house, and it's awful. It's awful. You can't sleep. You sweat. You have no sex drive. You gain weight. Your hair gets stringy. All these things happen that if you read one of my books, I'm thinking, I wrote a book called I'm Too Young for This, because most of us think I'm too young for it. Read that. That's the most comprehensive book I've ever written on hormones. And
that was eye-opening for me, because when I rediscovered your stuff, and, I've been dealing with this stuff for a few years now. And then also, especially after having kids, it just reshuffles the deck. My body was a little whacked out. And I've been luckily seeing great naturopath, and we've started there. But I really I have to say, I understand so much more now from your books, sadly, versus, well, you don't get much time with a doctor, no matter what kind of doctor they are.
No. The alternative doctors and the naturopaths, you get a little more time. And you get used to that, so that when you're suddenly find yourself in the office of a conventional doctor, you're shocked at the short amount of time you get.
Yeah.
I fractured my hip earlier this year, and I was at the doctor yesterday for a follow-up, and he's got 15 patients waiting in the other room. He's got to go now. You're fine. It looks good. Okay. And I'm thinking, I'm used to sitting and chewing the fat with my alternative doctors. So gaining weight, realizing in the time it took me to realize that the weight gain was hormonal imbalance. Learning everything I could about hormonal imbalance, because nobody understood it. And still today, many doctors, they don't learn it in medical school, because the pharmaceutical companies that support most of our big universities don't want you to teach the doctors about bioidentical hormones, because those of us who are on natural hormones don't need their drugs, or rarely need them unless it's an absolute necessity. And so we're not the customer they want. So let's just not teach the doctors how to keep the patients this healthy. But then along comes me. And the first book was so successful after all the summer size books that I wrote. Those were successful. That was the first time somebody said, high fat, high vegetable, high protein diet, give up sugar, give up grain until you achieve your desired weight. But that only works if your hormones are in balance. You can eat a high fat, high protein, high vegetable diet, but if your hormones are out of whack, they're going to keep messing with you.
Was that your message in the summer size? That's the opposite of the 90s. Remember, it was all about the low fat crap.
Right. I never did low fat.
Wow. You're ahead of your time.
I know. I always did high fat, and been fighting with doctors all along about the benefits of high fat. The alternative cardiologists are the ones who get the high fat message. They realize that in 1941, Dwight Eisenhower, who was then president of the United States, had a heart attack. And so they all decided that it was because he had bacon and eggs for breakfast every morning, and that we got to stop fats. And so a guy by the name of Ansel Keys did a study, flawed, very flawed study for which he won the Nobel Prize, saying that fat is the enemy. So everybody went on the low-fat movement, and margarine and all the chemicals. And as a result, we all got fatter and sicker. So every cell in your body, you have approximately 70 trillion cells in your body. I don't know who counted. Some people say 40 trillion, somewhere between 40 and 70 trillion. That's a lot. Each cell requires protein, fat, and carbohydrate to reproduce itself. And so in the carbohydrates, you can get in the form of dark green leafy vegetables and things like that. But butter, cream, sour cream, olive oil, full fat cream cheese, flax oil, coconut oil, all those things are good for you. And you get your medium chain triglycerides. And with coconut oil, if you got leaky gut, if you have a spoon of coconut oil every morning, it works like spackle in your GI tract to seal up the leaks. And that's loaded with medium chain triglycerides. So the health just sort of was like, there it was at my feet thinking, isn't this interesting that I'm on this path now, but that women are so grateful to be getting this information. And I thought, how wonderful is this to start another movement, the bioidentical hormone movement, that has the backs of women. Because nobody's had our back. They just wanted to fill us up until this bioidentical hormone movement really took hold. It's just easier to shut a woman up by giving her a sleeping pill, giving her a Valium to calm her down, giving her anti-cholesterol to calm her down and, go, eat your fat and this pill will fix it. They got us on a cocktail of like 9 pills. They're all foreign molecules. The body doesn't recognize foreign molecules. And so no wonder we all started getting sick and not feeling well. So I love every day because I sleep 8 hours without drugs. My hair is thick and shiny and my nails are good and my skin's not terribly wrinkled and I have a libido and I have passion and love in my life and I eat right and grow my own vegetables when, in season and life is good. So that's how all the, and then I wrote a book called Toxic, I don't know, a few years ago. And that's when I started doing research on that. I went, oh my God, these chemicals are killing us, our toxic burden, and it's affecting our brains. It's affecting the brains of our kids with those initials, ADD, ADHD, OCD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, and then dementia, Alzheimer's. We're under the greatest environmental assault in the history of humanity. And it's an experiment on us. And I'm going to venture to say it's not going well. 93% of our soy and corn in this country and the rest of the world is genetically modified. When you put GMO food in your intestines, it creates a little insecticide factory in your intestines. So you're wondering why everybody's got something wrong with their stomach and their leaky gut and all the gut problems and bloating and constipation and all those things. There's no drug answer to detoxing your body, but you can do it if you are diligent. One of the most amazing doctors I ever worked with, and when I got cancer 20 years ago, nobody was doing anything but chemotherapy, and I wasn't going to put chemicals in me. And so I used mistletoe injections. Mistletoe makes your immune system so strong nothing can invade or attack. I changed my thinking. I changed my sleeping. I just did basic things. I was able to fight that. And then 10 years later, I got breast cancer again in the other breast. And by that time, I had interviewed Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez in 2 or 3 of my books at that point. And his protocol is coffee enemas and pancreatic enzymes. And it's easy to laugh at that. But his theory was clean it out, as in detox with the coffee enemas, and feed it right, which is the pancreatic enzymes. Why pancreatic? Porcine is the closest to the human enzymes. So the enzymes go in there, and enzymes eat debris. Cancer is debris, toxins are debris. The enzymes go in there, nibble away, spit their debris out in the bloodstream. Then you have a coffee enema and wash the whole thing out with the coffee enema.
I've never tried coffee at the other end.
Yeah, right.
I like caffeine. I don't, we'll chat about that later, but
the nice thing is you could do it simultaneously. Who cares? What a picture, huh? Anyway, he was murdered, this doctor.
Oh my gosh.
Because he was having such success. He got a call 2 months before he was murdered from an anonymous caller that said, "You're going to be murdered. You won't know where it's coming from. It's going to look like a heart attack." I talked to him 3 hours before he died. He was fine. 3 hours later, his heart exploded. And so at the funeral, two things happened. The funeral was at this little church in upstate New York that looked like George Washington went to church there. You know, how they look up there. And it was filled with all his patients. Everyone looked healthy. There wasn't one I'm on chemo looking kind of patient. These were people who were cleansing their colons every day, keeping their liver in perfect working order and flushing out the cancer. And they couldn't have some little guy in New York City coming up with the answer to cancer when cancer is a $200 billion a year business. So I was aware of that. And then the other thing, the widow said to me about the anonymous phone caller that he was told to talk to Mike Baker. She said, "Do you know Mike Baker?" I said, "I don't, but I know who he is. He used to be with the CIA, and now he runs a company called Diligence Inc." So I called him and I said, "Do you know that you were mentioned in this anonymous phone call?" "No." "Do you know Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez?" "No." I said, "So you're with the CIA. Does the CIA have a way of inducing a heart attack in someone?" And he paused and he said, "Yeah, we have a heart attack gun." He said,
Is it the ice gun thing? It's like
well, the way he described it, he said, "I can be walking down the street and, just rub into your shoulder. You'll never feel it. And 5 hours later, your heart will explode." And that's what happened to him. So I don't see any good coming out of that relative to my theory on, negatives can be positives, except that he came to do what he came to do. And when I saw all his patients, he empowered them that they could heal themselves. And what a wonderful thing. And maybe that was his purpose, to come deliver that message and move to the other side.
You've become a real advocate for a lot of these physicians and health providers and really been, it's interesting because earlier in your career, and I still call you iconic. I use that word a lot. It's something for women. It's something for women to aspire to as well. You're remembered for something, but along your journey, you've become an iconoclast because you're taking on the medical industry, conventional thought. You're disrupting all this. You're doing it also with the new book, Age to Age. Tell me, this is risky in a way. I mean, so you must feel really passionate about it. When you hear about people getting knocked off for talking about this stuff, and I understand you've even had a close call or two, you believe.
Yeah.
So tell us why this is so important to you and the response it's been getting, especially from the women that you help.
Well, I realize that you don't choose passion. It chooses you. This is not what I was loving singing and dancing in Vegas, and I loved being Chrissy Snow. And I paid a price for being controversial, and I didn't think I was being controversial. I just thought, when did this happen? One doctor I interviewed, I said, "When did this happen?" He goes, "What?" I said, "This whole allopathic thing. Here's your problem. Here's the drug for that problem." He said, "I'll tell you exactly how." He said, at the turn of the century, he said, a guy by the name of Abraham Flexner was hired by the two richest families in America, the Carnegies and the Rockefellers, to go to the institutes of higher learning, Johns Hopkins, First Presbyterian, etc., and offer them funding in perpetuity if they will only teach allopathic medicine. What a perfect template if you own a pharmaceutical company, as the Rockefellers and Carnegies did. And that is how all the other pathics, chiropractic, homeopathic, etc., got pushed aside as quackery. And what I started doing was, let's bring back homeopathic, naturopathic, chiropractic. Let's bring back those pathics and take this is wacky stuff out of the equation. Because the way I approach my health is I do everything naturally unless I have to resort to allopathic medicine. And then when you need it, You need it. Like when I, fractured my hip, I needed anesthetic. I needed a painkiller. It was so painful. But because my body is used to not relying on that, I responded well and quickly. But I have paid a price, and I did spend 6 days in the hospital. I mean, I was fine the day before, and then all of a sudden, I'm sitting in a bar in Florida. I have to say, there was a big pharmaceutical sales conference going on there. Can't prove anything, never will be able to prove anything. But I had a glass of Merlot and a salad with my group. We had been on home shopping. And I put my salad on my Merlot on the cocktail table behind me. I only drank like a half of it. And all of a sudden, I didn't feel well. And the room started spinning. And then by the time Alan and I got to the threshold, I was freezing cold. We got upstairs, and I would ask him to lie on top of me. We're in Florida, and it's hot. And luckily, we had flown private. So we called up the plane. I flew home, couldn't get that plane warm enough. I get home. I call a doctor that I interviewed in one of my books. I start telling him, he goes, "Stop. You're in danger. Get to ER now." And the way he said it, I knew he was right. I got there, and I was taking my last breath. I was in anaphylactic shock. Put me on oxygen, banged Benadryl into me and Ativan and all this stuff. And then they did a CAT scan, and they come in and they go, "I hate to tell you this, but I've never seen so much cancer in a human body." And you're not thinking clearly, because the logical part of me would have said, "What? How did that happen overnight?" But this drug that was in my drink called succinylcholine, when you read up on it, overdosed in surgery. And then where would I get that drug? I'd never even heard of it. You go into anaphylactic shock. You get welts all over your body, which I got. Your extremities swell like elephantitis, check. And it reads like cancer on a CAT scan. But what it really is that rash is also inside your body. So it looks like you've got tumors everywhere, and I didn't. Luckily, I am who I am. Their solution was, what we can do is we can start you on chemotherapy today. Imagine how much chemotherapy they would have pumped into me if I had more cancer than I've ever seen in a human body. My body fought and fought and fought and fought for 6 days. And it was a nightmare. I wrote about it in my book called Knockout, Doctors Curing Cancer Without Drugs. So I know they play hardball. They killed my friend Nick. 60 alternative doctors have mysteriously died. Nobody wants to pick up on that. There's a dark force out there. And I've never planned to be this person. I like harmony. I like to get along with my husband. I like to grow my own vegetables. I like I have my organic skincare line, which I care so much about. Organic skincare, hair care, makeup, household cleaning products, not a single chemical in any of them.
Yeah, I was looking at your site. I didn't realize you'd expanded your line so much.
Yeah, when you use organic, your skin and your body gets used to it. When you go back to the stuff that you used to pay a whole lot of money for on the first floor of the department store, I've heard not only my experience, but I heard from so many people. I got rash all over when I went back to my regular cream. And I thought, because your body is now used to the clean stuff. So it's all meant to be. The good, the bad, the highs, the lows, the business that's come out of it. I work for myself. I have the most extraordinary partner in my husband, Alan Hamill. He has his lane and I have mine, and we are totally respectful of one another's lanes. I don't want to do what he does. And he could do what I do because he was an on-camera guy in Canada, but he has no ego. Oh my gosh. When he left his talk show in Canada after I was fired, I said, no, they love you. You're Johnny Carson up there. He said, "Oh, I've talked to everybody I want to talk to." He said, "You have potential to be a force, but you don't know what you're doing, and you're going to give it all away." And he's right.
I think that was after the story of you appeared as a guest on a show and got a fork in return or something.
Yes, exactly. On the Tim Conway show.
A longer story for a different time. But Suzanne, thank you. Just to wrap up, can you share for all the women listening, the business owners and aspiring business owners, and then also, just again, I just see you as so much more of a role model than I could understand in my younger years now, just your marriage and, you've lived it, like you've lived out loud, you've done it, and the stories. And I remember going through the books and just thinking, wow, to get through, a lot of your life and have these stories, it's just incredible. So the advice for us listening right now, like 3 of your best pieces would be great.
Well, forgive yourself. We women beat ourselves up so much. Every wrong choice is an opportunity. Every negative is an opportunity. For the screw ups in your life, forgive yourself. You're just teaching yourself and move on. Secondly, reinvent. When you reach a point in the journey of your life and it's no longer fulfilling, or if it's business, it's not throwing off money, maybe it's time to turn to the right or the left. Maybe there's a thigh master in your life. And thirdly, it's only about who you love and who loves you. And the older I get, the more I know that to be true. Love is the way, love is the answer. It sounds simplistic, but when you give into it, it's pretty powerful. And then go to SuzanneSummers.com and look at all my incredible products.
You will. And everyone pick up the new book, A New Way to Age.
Yes. I think this is my best book myself. If you don't know anything about anti-aging medicine, you'll find yourself there.
It's an exciting time for us.
Very. I would have loved things to have progressed to the point they are now when I was your age, but I didn't know that I was going to be one of the ones leading the charge. But it's the new way to age is you'll find yourself, if you don't know anything about anti-aging medicine, or if you know a lot about it, there's so much new information, interviews with doctors. Do you understand exactly the importance of the role your thyroid plays? And there's also supplements you can take, like senolytics, which cleans out cellular debris, and NAD, which repairs DNA breaks. And when you read the book, you'll know what that means. Those are true reverse aging supplements. And it's a pretty exciting time, health-wise. It's an exciting time for women, and love men. Men make our lives so fun, and forgive the ones who've been the jerks. They were just programmed incorrectly.
Yeah. It's thank you so much for your time. Everyone go to SuzanneSummers.com, pick up A New Way to Age, and we hope to talk to you again soon, Suzanne. Take care.
Thanks so much, Allie. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Glambition Radio. If you enjoy the show, make sure you subscribe so you automatically get my new shows every week. Also, I'd love if you left us a review so more women like you can discover us. We're on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Pandora, and other major platforms. And I'd love to hear from you personally. Come join the conversation on social. Instagram is my happy place lately, and that's Allie Brown Official, but you can find links to my other platforms at alliebrown.com. Glambition Radio is the elevated conversation for women leaders, and I'm honored you tuned in.